PHI206 Introduction to Metaphysics. Study Session 1. The meaning and nature of metaphysics. We will start this course by examining the meaning and nature of metaphysics. We will also explore the importance of metaphysics and metaphysical theories. Finally, we will examine challenges of metaphysical theories. When you have studied this session, you should be able to define and use correctly the term metaphysics. Appraise the following metaphysical theories such as materialism and idealism. In its detached sense, a position is considered metaphysical if it seems complicated beyond comprehensibility, fanciful, or imaginary. In its strict sense, however, metaphysics is a branch of philosophy which tries to answer the question, what is reality? It seeks to discover general normative criteria for what is real and how that differs from what may seem to be real but actually is not. The term is also employed to refer to the subject matter beyond the physical or the things we see. Historically, the discipline of metaphysics is far the most ancient branch of philosophy, beginning with the pre-Socratic Milesian philosopher-scientists of the 6th century BCE, who speculated on the ageless, deathless substance underlying the changing temporal world. Some thought this was water, others air, and still others felt there had to be more than one basic ingredient in order to account for the enormous variety of things in the world. In its contemporary sense, metaphysics has come to be understood as an inquiry into the general fundamental principles of reality. In other words, it attempts to discover a general theory of reality, a framework of principles and methods or procedures by which we would be able to access reality. This is to assist us in identifying what is real and how this is distinguished from what appears to be real but is not real. Metaphysics, however, is a branch of philosophy concerned with explaining the fundamental nature of being and the world. It attempts to determine the difference between appearance and reality. Traditionally, metaphysics attempts to answer two basic questions in the broadest possible terms, such as, what is there? What is it like? A person who studies metaphysics is called a metaphysicist or a metaphysician. The metaphysician attempts to clarify the fundamental notions by which people understand the world. For example, existence, objects and their properties, space and time, cause and effect, and possibility. Some have understood the study of metaphysics as ontology, which is the investigation into the basic categories of being and how they relate to each other. Today, metaphysics is not seen simply as the attempt to identify the first causes or to be concerned merely with the existence and nature of God, but is also seen as an attempt to clarify issues concerning the distinction between mind and body, the immortality of the soul, and freedom of the will. Metaphysical questions. The metaphysician turns his attention to broad questions which are raised in his mind by our daily experiences. What every metaphysician tries to do is to form a comprehensive view of reality and then organize this view into a system of ideas or concepts. The importance of metaphysics. Metaphysics tries to give us knowledge of how we fit into the universe. The motivation to pursue metaphysical knowledge is sometimes perceived simply as a quest for knowledge for its own sake. This pursuit satisfies man's wonder and the quest to know, and not for any utilitarian end, for this knowledge, says Aristotle, alone exists for its own sake. In concrete terms, however, as we go through our daily life experiences, it is most useful for us to separate what is real from what appears to be real but not actually real. Otherwise, we will be living in a risky life. For instance, we need to be able to distinguish real friend from one who appears to be a friend but not a real friend. Real food from poison that appears to be real food. Genuine drug from fake drug. Genuine currency from fake currency, and a genuine stranger in need of assistance from a fraudster. All these are guided by an acquisition of the general principles of reality. Let us now take a look at some metaphysical theories. The encounter of the world around us is always through the prism of some theory or metaphysical frameworks. In other words, when we attempt to understand the nature of things around us, it is always through some beliefs to which we ascribe. In line with this, if a philosophical history of the attempt to understand the nature of reality can be constructed, such a framework will be characterized by the materialistic or idealistic attitude in understanding reality. It will be useful, however, for the purpose of understanding the subject matter of metaphysics, to draw a definitive distinction between the notion of external world and reality. This is essentially for the purpose of clarity. The notion of the external world refers to the world around us as we can see and relate with or encounter. This would include the physical world or material world, institutions, relationships, and conditions. This, in sum, is part of reality. In other words, reality is larger than the external world because it includes the external world and all other things that we do not see or that are not visible, whether events or phenomena or beliefs or challenges and predicaments, giving us joy or pain, evil or good, life or death, existence or non-existence, the possibility of life beyond the physical world. All these are included in the notion of reality. The history of Western philosophy has been largely a struggle between two characterizations of reality, materialism and idealism. The fundamental question of metaphysics, which is what is reality, has therefore received a number of answers or responses that can be grouped into these theories. The first one, materialism. In its general understanding, materialism is a metaphysical theory which says that reality is matter and matter is reality. For anything to be real to the materialist, such as mind or consciousness, it must be reducible to and explainable in material terms. In other words, it is the belief of the materialist philosopher that if we are to reduce reality to its basic components, what we would have is matter. What this means is that tables and trees, stones and all other physical bodies which are made of matter are more real than those things that are not composed of matter. In this sense, in our evaluation of our daily experiences and in our assessment of our human relations, material manifestations are most real. Therefore, for the materialist, religious beings such as God, spirit, angels, the human soul that do not admit of material manifestation can be said to be real. Materialists include the atomist, the empiricist, and natural scientist, psychologists and sociologists in the social sciences, and a host of other atheistic persuasions which do not have a place for non-material entities in their beliefs. Radically opposed to this is idealism. Historically speaking, materialism is the oldest philosophical tradition in Western civilization, originated by a series of pre-Socratic Greek philosophers in the 6th and 5th centuries before the Christian era. It reached its full classical form in the atomists of Democritus and Epicurus in the 4th century BCE. Epicurus argued that reality consisted of invisible and indivisible bits of free-falling matter called atoms, randomly colliding in the void. It was on this atomic hypothesis that the Roman poet Lucretius wrote the first masterpiece of materialist literature around 50 BCE, the philosophical poem De Rerum Natura, or, as it is usually translated, The Nature of Things. Already, in Lucretius' great poem, we can see one of the hallmarks that distinguish materialism from every other comprehensive philosophy produced by European civilization before the 20th century: its insistence on direct observation of nature and on explaining everything that happens in the world in terms of the laws of nature. In other words, from the beginning, materialists have always based their theory on the best scientific evidence at hand, rather than on some putative first philosophy waiting to be discovered through abstract philosophical reasoning. The tendency is clear in the second masterpiece of materialist literature, Baron Paul D. Holbach's La Système de la Nature, The System of Nature, which appeared in France in 1770. The Holbach bases his mechanical determinism on Newtonian physics and Lockean psychology, arguing that every event in nature, including all human thought and moral actions, are the result of an inexorable chain of causation rooted in the flux of atomic motion. Like Lucretius, he insists there is no reality other than matter moving in space, as Newton theorized in his laws of motion and gravity. De Holbach also attributes all thought to images impressed on the mind's tabula rasa, or blank slate, in wholly mechanical fashion according to these same laws of motion, as Locke had argued. So too with the third pre-20th century masterpiece of materialist literature, Ludwig Büchner's 1884 edition of Kraft und Staff, translated Force and Matter. Trained as a scientist, Büchner, like Lucretius and de Holbach, saturated force and matter with the best science of his day, including cutting-edge theories and discoveries in physics, chemistry, geology, and biology, which of course incorporated Darwin's theory of evolution. Yet, neither Lucretius and Holbach nor Büchner claimed that materialist philosophy was an empirical science. They all realized it rested on assumptions that were ultimately meta-scientific, though never metaphysical in the Aristotelian sense. That is, the assumptions of materialism reached beyond empirical science, though never beyond physical reality. These meta-scientific assumptions were, first of all, that material or natural reality formed an unbroken material continuum that was eternal and infinite. Nature had no beginning or end. It was an eternal, self-generating and self-sustaining material fact without any sort of barrier or limit zoning it off from a non-material, non-physical or supernatural type of being. The only foundational being there was material being, and some kind of natural substance underlay all visible phenomena. Lucretius called this endless facts of material being the all, and with Holbach and Buchner concluded it lacked any plan or purpose and consisted of blindly opposing forces locked in an ultimately self-cancelling cosmic or gridlock. Of course, these assumptions implied, secondly, the lack of any governance or management of the universe by any sort of transcendental intelligence. From the start, materialism has been implicitly atheistic, though its atheistic implications were not fully spelled out before the Holbach did so in his system. Materialism has always viewed atheism merely as a necessary consequence of its premises, not as a philosophically important end in itself. Thirdly, materialism has always assumed that life is wholly the product of natural processes. All human thought and feeling emerges from the non-living, inorganic matrix of physical nature and ends at death. Lucretius believed that thoughts and feelings were literally made up of a film of very fine atoms that peeled away from objects and were combined in the brain. So, materialism has always inferred its theories from the best empirical evidence at hand and has, as a result, always had its meta-scientific hypothesis scientifically confirmed, because the basic assumption of valid science has also always been that nature is governed by coherent, discoverable physical laws. Idealism. Idealism is a metaphysical theory that holds that ideas are the real. In other words, when reality is reduced to its lowest terms, what we have are ideas. It is the attitude that places special value on ideas and ideals as products of the mind, in comparison with the world as perceived through the senses. Since ideas are of the mind, the idealist believes that reality is mind-dependent. Put differently, it does not deny the existence of tables and trees, stones and bodies, but that their reality depends on the human mind. As one of its greatest proponents, George Berkeley, once said, "To be is to be perceived, and since to be perceived is of the mind, reality is of the mind." The notion of idealism is with several related meanings. It comes via idea from the Greek eidein, meaning to see. In ordinary use, it generally suggests the priority of ideals, principles, values, and goals over concrete realities. In this sense, idealists are understood to represent the world as it might or should be, unlike pragmatists who focus on the world as it presently is. In philosophy, idealism refers to the group of philosophies which assert that reality, or reality as we can know it, is fundamentally mental, mentally constructed, or otherwise immaterial. In this regard, any philosophy that assigns crucial importance to the ideal or spiritual realm in its account of human existence may be termed idealist. As an ontological doctrine, idealism goes further, asserting that all entities are composed of mind or spirit. Idealism thus rejects physicalist and dualist theorists that fail to ascribe priority to the mind. An extreme version of this idealism can exist in the philosophical notion of solipsism. Furthermore, metaphysical idealism is an ontological doctrine that holds which reality itself is incorporeal or inexperiential at its core. Beyond this, idealists disagree on which aspects of the mental are more basic. Platonic idealism, for instance, affirms that abstractions are more basic to reality than the things we perceive, while subjective idealists and phenomenalists tend to privilege sensory experience over abstract reasoning. Epistemological idealism is a view that reality can only be known through ideas, that only psychological experience can be apprehended by the mind. Objective idealists make claims about a trans-empirical world, but simply deny that this world is essentially divorced or ontologically prior to the mental. Thus, Plato and Gottfried Leibniz affirm an objective and knowable reality transcending our subjective awareness, that is, a rejection of epistemological idealism, but propose that this reality is grounded in ideal entities, a form of metaphysical idealism. To be sure, transcendental idealists like Kant affirm idealism's epistematic side without committing themselves to whether reality is ultimately mental. Objective idealists like Plato affirm reality's metaphysical basis in the mental or abstract without restricting their epistemology to ordinary experience. And subjective idealists like Berkeley affirm both metaphysical and epistemological idealism. Beginning with Immanuel Kant, German idealists such as G. W. F. Hegel, Johann Gottlieb Fichte, Friedrich Wilhelm Joseph Schelling, and Otto Schopenhauer dominated 19th century philosophy. This tradition emphasized the mental or ideal character of all phenomena, birthed idealistic and subjectivist schools, ranging from British idealism to phenomenalism to existentialism. The historical influence of this branch of idealism remains central even to the schools that rejected its metaphysical assumptions, such as Marxism, pragmatism, and positivism. In this study session, we examined the meaning and nature of metaphysics. We identified some basic questions of metaphysics, and we noted that the knowledge of metaphysics is required for everyday life experience and for navigating the world of appearances so as to locate those things that are real and therefore attain a more stable life condition. We also examined the two broad metaphysical theories of reality, materialism and idealism. We have now come to the end of Study Session 1. Thank you for listening.